UnDivorceWitable in the house, full effect. Here we go. New episode. Boom.
If only y'all knew what we go through before this.
You know.
If only.
If only, y'all.
The way yes, if only.
I be have to be on my Spike Lee. Like, you better get focused.
Yeah,
Get focused.
Yes.
I'm on my Spike. My
Spike
spit
Lee.
like.
Call it Spike Lee, call it whatever. You gonna get spiked.
See what I'm saying? Black women violent.
Anywho.
Need to be protected at all costs. Somebody protect me though. What about me?
Whatever. So, hello, everyone.
What's up, guys?
Welcome to the second episode of season 3. So we are here together. We hope you guys listened to the episode last week, episode 1. We'd love to hear from you and see what your thoughts are about the episode, if it resonated with you or whatever. But today, in talking about last week's episode and different things like that, I forget actually what brought the conversation about. This is how all of our podcast topics happen. Like, we'll just be talking about something like that, make a great topic, because we're always talking about different things and how they affect marriages and what causes marriages to end or be successful. So we were talking, and it just came about that in a marriage there's lots of changes.
Yes.
No one, you really shouldn't stay the same. You evolve, you change, you want to better yourself, you go through things in life, different life events and different things that change you as well. So how do you deal with changes in your spouse? How do you deal with that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So some of those things can be like health issues, life-altering experiences or issues that you have, just growing older, changes in your career. We've experienced a lot of these different changes throughout our marriage. We've been married for, a long time. So
16 going on 17 years, okay? Our anniversary is actually June 12th, for all those who want to know and want to cash out us a happy anniversary gift token of some monies and some things like that.
Yes, for our trip, hopefully we can take in 2021. If it's not like 2020,
right, so before we even get started, song reference to today's topic, Music Soul Child, Don't Change. I'll love you till your hair turns gray. I'll love you when your hair turns gray. I'll even love you if you gain a little weight. Hey.
That's good.
Check that song out, man.
That's good.
What was that? 2002, 2003 it came out. It's a long time ago.
That is a
timeless
good one.
Music for today's topic.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So, in dealing with these changes, with changes in a relationship, and in a marriage, I feel like the most important factor, the most important thing is communication.
You gotta bump them gums.
Yes, you gotta talk. So you gotta talk about the fact that you notice a change in your spouse if you're not the one that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to talk about the fact of, like, what does that change mean? Because you're both gonna be affected by the change. And just let them know that you support them, that you're there for them, that you're here to be their partner and not their enemy, right?
I would say.
Okay.
But then, within that, there are so many things that happen, and there's so many nuances to this scenario. So take, weight gain, take health issues and things like that. A lot of times, I don't think people are able to be as honest about how superficial they are. So let's throw health issues out of that. I'm not talking about health issues. But I think one thing that happens in this, where you talk about communication, is people are not as honest about how superficial they are.
Right. But is it really superficial, or just the lack of reality, the lack of acknowledging the fact that when you marry a woman in her 20s or 30s, she's going to have children. She's going to go through menopause and different things like that. So that by the time you get to 60s, unless she's like a health nut and one that stays in the gym and everything, her body's not going to look the same.
But dog, it's not even till your 60s though. Like,
It's not even till your 60s, but I was
it's people who are like they get married and 3 years later.
Yeah, people get comfortable.
The clips, what happened to that boy? That's like, yeah.
But that's the thing, like people get comfortable in their marriage because they're with somebody. You ain't gotta, even though you should. Most people feel like I don't have to do anything to keep this person because I got them. Where they going? Even though people be stepping out all the time.
But some people just get fat and happy though.
They do. They get fat and happy.
And that's cool. If they are cool with.
If they're both
each
cool
other.
with it. But that's the thing. I feel like weight is such a sensitive topic. And, because if a wife goes to a husband or a husband goes to a wife and says, baby, you've put on about a good 20, 25 pounds. I need you to do something about it. That spouse is not going to take that well.
But nobody ever really takes anything that they feel as quote unquote an attack or criticism, even if it's coming from an honest place. They don't take it well. So case in point, I use myself. When we first got married, you know what I'm saying, I was a beanpole. To make sure that I was, supporting my wife and all of that. And life changes, dealing with a family. We got married in 2004. By 2006, I was looking like the quail from the Foghorn Leghorn cartoons. I was just
Not the quail.
I paired out. I was just like, holy smokes, what happened to me? You know what I mean? And there's been those fluctuations. There's been those things, and I think that for a lot of people who are in love, it truly doesn't matter. It truly doesn't. But then they don't realize that it doesn't matter a lot of times until they're starting to get attention from somebody who's maybe a little more shapely, maybe a little more, you know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, my husband used to be like this, and now Gerald at work is all up on me. You know what I'm saying? And that's one thing that I think that in these changes that we're talking about, communication, it is very important, but also self-awareness is important. Because if you're not self-aware about your own superficialities, because I think in our culture, we're told to bury them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to give into your honest self. So that at least you can say, yeah, this is my honest self, and I want to change the way I think. Or you like, this is me, this is who I am, and I ain't gonna change.
There's that.
Yeah.
So understanding that and knowing that. But I feel like it is so interesting that we're having this conversation because, so I was talking to my best friend on the phone the other night, and I was talking about something completely different, but it was still on the topic of relationship. And her and I have been best friends for over 20 years. And aside from like my parents, my brother, and my husband, she's the next person in line that knows the real Giovanna. Like she'll call me out on stuff. She'll honestly call me out. But when she does it, I know she does it in love. We've been friends for so long. We've been through some things where our friendship has like went down and come back. You know what I'm saying? So it's like for us to have gone through the things we've gone through and, I got her back, she has mine. Then when she comes at me and says, no, you were wrong for that, or you shouldn't have said it like that, or why were you so harsh, or whatever, I know that it's coming from a place in love, even though it's criticism. And I feel like sometimes we can accept those types of conversations with a friend better than we can a spouse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, do you think that the cruel factor can be a little different with somebody that you're in the house with every day? And this is what I mean. So let's say you have a spouse and you know that they are not applying themselves to anything. in the best way possible. So they're overeating. You talk to them. You know, you can voice your concerns, or at least you feel you have, and then all of a sudden you decide to get a little more cruel to get your point across. Your words may be a little sharper and a little more pointed. Like, do you think that's something that happens in these situations and scenarios? Because friends still want to be your friend.
Exactly. And I think that is the difference. As you were talking, I was trying to listen to what you're saying, but then not forget the thought that I had. But I think that's the difference. For some reason, when you're friends with somebody, it's like you know that friend is there out of choice. Okay? And even though the spouse is still there out of choice, especially at, you know, the way people get divorced, the spouse is there still out of choice. I think that and I'm about to be really transparent here. My problem and my issue is that even though we've been together for how long we've been together, even though, you know, I know you love me unconditionally, and we've been through a lot to prove that, or whatever, you share that with me on a regular basis, there's still a part of me that feels that I have to, not feels that I have to win you over, but there's still a part of me that wants to be the person that you want to be with. Like, still turn you on, still, you know, chase after me. I don't want that to be lost. So I think in a marriage, for me at least, in our marriage, if I'm doing something that lets you down, I feel like I failed. Does that make sense? So in that situation, like, if your spouse is saying, hey, you've put on about 15 pounds, and they're coming, they've said it, you know, in nice ways, different things, like, hey, how about, you know, I'm about to go on a walk. You want to walk with me? No, I'm going to sit here and eat these chips. And they're like, dang, okay, I tried to say it nice, and some time goes by, and they're like, you know, I'm sick of you sitting on that couch eating some chips. You need to get up and walk with me. Then you're gonna react a whole different way than you would react to when they said, hey, you want to just go on a walk with me. And so then it comes to the point where you're going to respond defensively because now you're hurt.
Yep.
So that's why communication is so important, but then understanding yourself and understanding your spouse is very important. That they're not necessarily trying to come in a way of attack, but they're trying to come out of love. So knowing how to have those hard conversations with your spouse in the right time. Don't come at them with this conversation when they just came home from work and they're mad stressed.
Yeah.
You know, but let them
Or
know.
don't do it like a Tyler Perry movie, because I feel like the conversations that need to be had come out at the absolute wrong time.
Right.
Holy smokes.
Right. And I hate how on TV or on movies, it's always like, I need to talk to you. Oh, I need to talk to you too. Okay, you go first. No, the person that initiated the conversation needs to go first. Because when the other person goes, then it just knocks everything off.
Especially when it's like one of them like, babe, I got a promotion. And then the other person's like, oh, well, I've been sleeping with your brother. And we're about to run off together.
Right.
And
Exactly.
he's about to be Uncle Dad to your nephew's son. I mean, it's weird, you know what I'm saying?
Uncle Dad
Like,
to your nephew's son. I can't with you.
that's how they
Okay.
that's how they be doing it, man. And sometimes art imitates life.
It does. So in these conversations, you're noticing a change within your spouse, and you want to have that difficult conversation with your spouse. First of all, you got to know that there's going to be some pushback.
Of course.
Right? There's going to be some pushback. They're probably not going to be too receptive of what you have to say to them.
And can I add something real quick? And the one thing about this too is you can't really be getting at your spouse about stuff that they cannot change. Like that's one thing, and I'm not saying if they apply themselves they could change it. They can't change it. Like, you can't get with a nice chocolate milk malted brother like myself, and then all of a sudden,
Okay, sorry.
I'm about to turn this into an OnlyFans. It's about to get hectic up here.
I'm sorry. Go with your thought.
On the other part of that, like, and then all of a sudden you talking about your skin's too dark. Cause I'm not about to bleach my skin. Okay, I'm not about to try to lighten it up. You best to just go move on with somebody.
Okay, and you saying that, let's circle back because I feel like, okay, just to kind of circle back and reset the room like they say on Clubhouse. Let's go back to when we're talking about changes, because a lot of people sometimes go into a marriage with certain things that they don't like about somebody and they look to change those things within that person. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about that within a marriage, during the course of a marriage, there's going to become times where people change and different things happen in a marriage, and it's like, wait a minute, whoa, what just happened? So, case in point, all right, let's say your spouse is dealing with something. We had this situation. Okay, so Rance was dealing with a lot of stress at work. Okay, the job that he just left a couple months ago was very stressful. Lot of long hours, lot of overtime, hardly any sleep, and y'all know how lack of sleep can affect somebody. On top of just everyday issues, you know, family things, he was going through a lot. He was dealing with a lot, and he was just real snappy. And so I don't even remember what the argument was about, but we had got into an argument, and it just escalated. And it just escalated and got out of hand.
For no reason.
For no reason. And I feel like it was something small.
It was like, we need new pillows.
I feel like it was something small that just like went completely left. And as soon as it got out of hand, I just kind of paused and I was like, wait a minute. What's really going on? What just happened? Like, are we really doing this based off of whatever the issue was?
These pillows.
And then it just kind of like, it was like a real meltdown with the two of us, and it just kind of like the stresses of life caused so much change in Rance, and I was just kind of like, I wasn't ready for it. And then I took it personal because the way that he was changing, the things that he was doing, it was like he was snapping at me. So within that, when we talk about changes in a relationship, because of proximity and because you're the closest person, because you're that person's spouse, most of the time, if there's any type of stress, if there's anything going on in somebody's life, you're going to want to be the one to catch it because I'm closest to you. You know, I can say something, you could be having a thought and really dealing with your stress, and then I say something that causes like, when you gonna pay this bill, or we need this bill, and that just adds to your stress, and the next thing you know, you popping off, and I'm looking at you like, what is wrong with you? I'm asking you about a monthly bill that needs to be paid. Why are you spazzing right now? You know what I'm saying? So just understanding that when you're seeing differences in your spouse, they're acting, you know, their behavior, their tones, their you know, it could be even they're eating more snacks, you know what I'm saying, and eating more junk food, and it's like, okay, what's going on? You know, how do you address those things?
Yeah, and I think in that, like, sometimes you have to do a maintenance check in your marriage, and sometimes that maintenance check may need to involve a third party. Like, it may need to involve a counselor, someone who can see outside of what you're looking at, especially if you lack self-awareness and you are, you know, just rolling with the flow. Because I think in general, most people lack self-awareness. Right.
They don't know how to analyze themselves and like say, okay, I've been acting real different lately. Like, what's my problem? What's going on with me? What's causing this? Why am I all of a sudden unhappy?
Yeah, and one person, and that's where I feel like in a lot of relationships people butt heads anyway. It's because one of the individuals is very self-aware, the other one isn't.
Yeah.
And so this one sees areas where correction can happen to make things really great. This person's like, why are you always worried about something? And so communication is one thing to talk. It's one thing to hear with your ears, but it's a whole nother thing to actually try to relate to and empathize with what your partner is saying.
Right.
You know? And I think that that's one thing that we've learned to do. And sometimes we do well, really well. And of course, there's going to be times when you don't do so well, depending on how close to home the conversation is hitting.
Right. And know, like we said earlier, know that your spouse has your best interest in mind. So, like, okay, y'all know from the podcast that Rance is, a straight shooter. Y'all know that he just says it like it is. He's not gonna sugarcoat nothing. He ain't got no sugar in his cabinet. He don't believe in sugar. It don't exist in his world. So
except for cookies, chocolate chip cookies.
I'm talking as far as
I know. I
conversation.
just wanted to be silly.
He loves chocolate chip cookies. But anyway, so that's the thing. I had to come to the realization that, like I said before, I used to be mad sensitive before Rance and I. And I've learned to have a tough skin. I've learned to have tough skin because I am in a relationship with a man who I know he wants what's best for me.
But
I know
I'm not cruel though.
He's not cruel, and that's why I had to say, I know you want what's best for me. He wants me to be the best version of myself. He will call me out if I'm talking about something. He will tell you the things that you don't want to hear. You know what I'm saying? Well, if you don't like this, then you need to change this. You know what I'm saying? If you don't like this, then he will come with the solutions. And sometimes, we as women, we just want to vent. We don't want solutions. But the thing is, being in this relationship with him, I know that he means well. And so you have to know that when you're with your spouse, that they mean well. I've learned to take your criticism. And even though it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes when you're being criticized, but to know that it's coming from a place of love. And sometimes I'm like, what?
I don't know. I feel like Ike Turner or somebody, because I'm not.
No, I'm not trying to make you sound like Ike Turner, but I'm just saying,
I'm just critical all the time. Nigga, I hate this.
No, I'm just saying that in the course of our marriage, now we talk about a lot. I'm a business owner. I go to Rants for a lot of things. I'm a solopreneur, okay? As a solopreneur, I don't have no
You don't have a board.
I don't have a board to bounce ideas off of or any. This is my board. This lovely chocolate man. This is my board. So therefore, we talk about a lot of things, and as a business owner making decisions and different things like that, there's times where I have to analyze myself. What are my intentions? And sometimes you call me out on that, well, what are you trying to do? Okay, well, if you're trying to do this, then take yourself out of it. Do what's best for the customer, different things like that. But it's okay, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to be, when someone is letting you know about yourself, so to speak, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow.
Yep.
And we as people, we get defensive then instead of yeah, you're right, okay, but it's it's an attack on you as a person, so you kind of be you put that guard up.
Yep, and I think that's one thing too, business versus personal makes a difference in that. I think that sometimes, you love your business and your business is your baby, but you can also go to the parent-teacher conference and hear negative things about your baby and want to change it. And I think in the romantic relationship side of it, depending on how you approach it, it can have an effect on so many things. Your intimacy, the sex, it can, and so there's a fine line in between how you go about, how I go about approaching certain topics compared to others. So I may hit a little harder when it comes to business subjects and topics and things like that, but I'm not going to be as tough when it comes to those personal things. Like if you had a personal insecurity that you're dealing with, you know what I'm saying? I'm not so crazy wild ranch y'all be seeing on camera or hearing on the podcast. I'm not going to be that guy in that moment. I may say something to make you laugh, but and I think that when it comes to what we're talking about today, it's so important just to know, to understand the nuances that make a good conversation, and also do some learning. There are so many resources, online books. If you don't like to read, Audible books about things that help you deal with people. You know what I'm saying? Management books. And I'm not saying try to go and apply this stuff and try to work your voodoo on your spouse at all, but it can help you look on the inside to figure out how, because life experiences, the way we come up with our friends, the way our parents talk to each other, or maybe your parents weren't together, but you still saw them interact in a negative way, or mom or dad always had different boyfriends and girlfriends in and out. Now you're trying to try this situation where you guys are monogamous and it's abnormal to your subconscious because you didn't grow up that way. So you got to really look at all these factors.
Right.
And not having all these factors together does not mean you won't be successful. But knowing is almost like having different types of arsenal. So I know how I am. I know some of my thought processes about relationships, about life in general. And because I'm aware of it, I can gauge and guide the way I react and talk. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, when I'm trying to get my romantic on, I'm like, girl, I just want you to melt into me,
You
girl.
move your shoulders like that?
Like a Kappa. When they be shimmying, it's terrible. It's the
Oh my
worst.
gosh.
Your granddaddy was a Kappa.
I have a lot of Kappas in my family.
I wish he was alive so I could ask him if he shoulder shimmy.
But that's the thing. So in a marriage, knowing that your spouse is going to change, life situations, loss of family members, loss of parents. When we went through our youngest son and the trauma, that was traumatic. The trauma that we went through with him, you know, coming into this world way before his time.
Last 3 episodes of season 2, if you want to hear that story in full.
Definitely. And, you know, not knowing if he was going to make it, you know, going to the hospital, living that hospital life and adapting to those changes. Me and Rance are not the same people that we were prior to 2016. We're not. We've went through some things that had to harden us. We've went through, you know, we understand the importance of, you know, loving our children just because they're alive and here with us. Because we know that, you know,
They could be gone.
they could have been gone. You understanding that we have 3 miracles because all of our children were preemies. The younger they got, the more premier they got. But all of our children were preemies. And so understanding like our babies are miracles. Not to you know take away from anybody else's babies, but our babies are miracles. And we're grateful to have them in our lives, but then also the importance of protecting your children at all costs. We had to protect our child at all costs from so many different things in the healthcare industry. So we're not the same people we used to be because life has hardened us. And understanding that change, that when, you know, somebody doesn't sound like, I don't sound as sweet as I was back when Rance first met me. I'm a little bit more hardcore now.
A lot more.
Just a little bit.
No, I ain't no little bit.
A little bit. That nobody stays the same. Not to take it personal, because it may not have anything to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
It may be something that they're dealing with inside or, you know, on the job or something like that. Ask with an open mind and a caring tone to start the conversation, to address what the change is and that you're noticing the change. And then be patient with your spouse. Maybe they're not ready to talk about it. Maybe they didn't even realize that what they were internally dealing with is showing on the outside, or that it's affecting those around them. Maybe they don't know why they're crying in the middle of the night. Maybe they don't know why they all of a sudden have these changes or are feeling a certain way, and they maybe need to go see a therapist, talk to somebody on their own to kind of dig deep. Maybe it's a trigger of something from their childhood that has triggered them, you know, recently, and they didn't even realize that they were, you know, responding to that trigger. So being patient with them, give that person grace. Allow your spouse to be needy. We all go through changes in our life, and this is part of the conversation I had with my best friend the other day, was that there's times when I'm going through something and I really need her to be there for me. There's times where she's going through something and she really needs me to be there for her. She needs to be that shoulder to cry on, the person to vent to. Your spouse needs that just as well. So even though you look at your husband to be the strong one, the one that maybe, or you may have a spouse that that has the answers for everything, that's a stronger person, that's always on, that knows all this, allow them the grace to be weak. Allow them the grace to be needy. Allow them the grace to be, if they need a little extra love and attention within the moment, then they're used to getting.
And you know what I gotta say? It's time to cancel this weird energy that a lot of women that I'm seeing. I see this activity on social media, especially with more so pop culture discussions and stuff like that. I was having a conversation, and it had to do with hip hop or something like that on Twitter. And so there was a general question that I asked the original poster, and her response was, "I'm not going to explain nothing to no man."
Oh. Okay.
I was like, how weird are you? Like, you are because there's so much of this off, like this mentally deranged thought processes that are really within generation Y or whatever came after millennials, who are now becoming adults. And like some of the ways that people are thinking, you see how it translates over into bad dating, bad courtships, bad relationships, hookup culture. So now, really the only thing you really got to offer is what's between your legs. And most of y'all really aren't that great at that. I just hate, and I'm not saying just that generation, just a lot of single people or a lot of people who really think so highly of themselves. Like, stop the weird energy where you act like you can't explain yourself or it's a problem, giving an explanation or talking about what's really going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying any generation has mastered that, because our grandparents' generation, they ain't do a whole lot of talking. You know what I'm saying? I think our parents' generations made them a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And when guys feel like, my generation, we feel like you couldn't be emotional. You had to be gangstered up. You had to be, you know what I'm saying? Women ain't spit but hoes and tricks. Like, that's how we grew up. And so there has been total lapses in every generation when it comes to the opposite sex dealing with each other properly.
Yes, I agree.
There have been like disgusting lapses. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. If you grew up thinking you don't have to explain nothing to no man, then don't ask for an explanation when he's boning your best friend.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. When you can't have these honest conversations, no, it's time to be real with it though. If you can't have these honest conversations and you feel like it's something that makes you weak and vulnerable to have the conversation you need with the opposite sex, and you can't do it because of however this weird masculine, feminine energy that you got, where you trying to be the boss, but you trying to do all these things, like, y'all got to figure out what role are you playing.
Yeah, because in any relationship that you're in, communication is key.
Yeah, you got to figure. Look, if you want to be the hard rock, the boss nigga in a relationship, but you got two breasts and a really plump backside, what role is he gonna play? And men, you got to step up on this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, men, you gotta really not be afraid to take charge. And depending on how you grew up, I know that can be harder for some than others. Like, if you grew up with nothing but your grandmother raising you and your mother raising you, and maybe you didn't have positive male role models or strong male role models. Maybe you had positive ones, but they weren't there like a father could be or something like that. There is a time where we just really gotta start putting all this stuff aside. And I'm not saying you need labels. I think that men can do a lot of things that women can do. Women can do a lot of things that men can do.
Right.
It's time to start figuring out this whole yin and yang thing of how to balance our energies and balance our expertises and make something great happen together.
That's good.
Sick of y'all.
Okay, now that he's off his soapbox, figuring out a solution together on how to deal with the change.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just accepting the person for the new person that they are, and learning how to get along with them right where they are.
Okay, so we got something for this. Keep going.
Okay.
But I got something for this after you
Okay.
say that.
So I was gonna say this is why it's important to continue to date your spouse. The dating doesn't end after you say I do. You have to continue to court them. You have to continue to talk to them and get to know them and everything, because throughout life changes and throughout different seasons, you're gonna learn different things about your spouse. And then the last thing is, oh, okay, go ahead.
So, what I was going to say was, so me and my wife, we've been together for 19 years. Been married for 16. And recently, something I posted on Facebook, she had no idea about.
Yeah.
And so, what the post was is basically, I said that it takes so much energy for me to deal with people, you have no idea. And I was explaining to people in the comments that I'm very much an introvert. But most people see me as an extrovert because I am not your typical introvert like most people aren't, where they're hermit crabs, they live in their mother's basement, it's always dark, they're always playing video games, they come up for Cheetos and to brush their teeth every once in a while. I'm not that guy. I can be around people, I can go to events and things like that, but basically how I recharge is being by myself or in our home environment. And my wife really didn't realize that after all these years. I think even you kind of look at me as an extrovert.
I looked at you as an extrovert, but what it was just really understanding the difference of extrovert and introvert. In that it's a spectrum. There's a middle spectrum, and there's, like he explained. And so realize, like, I know my husband, like when we go to church, when church was open, our church is still closed, unlike some of y'all's. We still practicing safety, keeping people safe. But anyway.
We're not judging though, as you cough in Jesus' name.
But anyway, when we were in church, like, me and the kids would be in the car for like 5-10 minutes waiting for him. And I'm like, why didn't I take a separate car? Because he in there talking it up. And
but it's not because I'm not being stopped by people though. But
whatever the reason, he's in there talking, chit-chatting, mingling, you know what I'm saying, doing his thing. And then what I didn't realize is the fact that he needs a recharge. I didn't realize that. So on Monday and Tuesday, when me and our daughter or something is trying to go hang out with somebody after Sunday, we wondering like, why he talking about, nah, I just want to stay here and be on the couch or whatever. I don't want to go, and looking at us crazy.
You never say it like that though.
Sorry. Looking at us crazy because we want to go out again. And I'm like, I didn't realize that he needed the recharge. That's what I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And so when he posted it, I was like, dang, I thought I knew my husband. I don't know this man. But it explained so much in our marriage. It explained so much. Because when case in point, we could have, like, during the holidays, if we have family over, they're over for longer periods of time, right? And so in the midst of them being over, all of a sudden, Rance will disappear. And he'll disappear, go to the room, take a nap, watch TV, be on his phone, whatever. He will disappear for a minute. And sometimes people ask me, like, where's Rance? I'm like, oh, okay, he's taking care of something, or, he just went upstairs for a second or whatever, because his presence is always missed. And so, because he's the life of the party, and that's why.
But I'm pushing out so much energy to be that life of the party.
Right, that he has to go and
get
his battery recharged
and
then come back.
Sleepy Bear from the Care Bears, you be waiting on me to sprinkle that sleepy dust. I get a little 15-20 minute nap and then I come back down.
So his father was kind of like that in a sense, and I just thought that was just like.
So I, told my wife stories, about my dad, and I never knew back then what any of these labels, terms were, all my mom would call it was antisocial. Mm-hmm. And I think that's not necessarily a fair assessment of most people as antisocial who are introverts. Some people they gather their energy from being, and of course, they've had conversations over the years that she talked about that I won't get into here. But there were those feelings of, there are times where I want to be out and amongst the people, but I need to be in. So, yeah.
So understanding your spouse, understanding those changes, understanding the whys and everything, communicating those are so important to help you, you know, have a better marriage.
Yep.
And last but not least is loving them no matter what, because love conquers all.
One of the greatest slogans of the 80s.
Not of the
Love conquers all. I mean, you know, Whitney Houston had a song, "The Greatest Love of All."
She did.
You know.
She did. So yeah, so we hope that, you know, in the midst of 2020, there's been a lot of time together and everything with our spouses and our family members. I'm sure you've noticed some changes. I'm sure some changes have come about. But hopefully this helps you guys in dealing with those changes.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this is like, you know, made you think a little bit about some things. Like, oh man, that, you know. If it has, feel free to let us know. Comment, share, like us, you know, all that good stuff.
Laugh and have more sex. I also want you to do that. But we promised y'all that we was going to do a clubhouse. Last week we failed. We just got busy. But we're going to try this Friday. Let's put a time on it. This Friday.
Noon?
Yeah. So if you're on Clubhouse, that's like kind of early, isn't it?
Okay. What time?
Let's do a noon. People are on Clubhouse all day. So we're going to try noon. We're going to try to get in there and try to talk and share about what we talked about on the podcast.
Yes.
So, yeah, man, we're going to do that. Of course, the room is going to probably be called UnDivorceWitable.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to look that up on Clubhouse. And, yeah, man, thank you guys for listening to us. Share us on Facebook.
Yes.
Instagram, follow us, UnDivorceWitable. All of our properties are at UnDivorceWitable. So it's impossible for you to get lost. We appreciate y'all, man. We thank you for listening.
All right. Bye.
Peace out. Till next week.